Hello and welcome to the show. Now, in the world of rallying, it's hard to get much more influential than the Audi Quattro. This was the car that showed everybody, well, if you wanted to compete with it, you pretty much had to go with four-wheel drive. On the dirt stuff, the four-wheel drive Audi was just far too much for the likes of the Lancia 037. However, the Lancia was the only rear-wheel drive car ever to beat the mighty Quattro, and on somewhere such as Germany, where the roads are tarmac, the four-wheel drive cars didn't have such an advantage, which got me thinking, how would, now that we have a couple of rear-wheel drive Group B cars, fare against their four-wheel drive counterparts on a tarmac stage? So I set about testing the vehicles to see what sorts of times could the 037 really beat the Audi Quattro around this stage. I started first of all with the Audi. I really quite like this. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the name because I will get it terribly, terribly wrong. I think it begins with an F and there's a picture of the plane. That's about as much information as I get. It's a really good stage one. A nice short stage. The German stages, there are a couple of fast ones. A lot of it is tight corners. We're talking hairpin, even some acute corners and so on. There's a lot of tight corners. There are a couple of deceptively tricky fast ones. This bit here, it's horrible in the cars. The Audi deals with it lovely though. The Audi is such a nice, easy car to drive. I'm really glad I picked this as the first car to take down this course. It really is a very, very easy car to drive down this stage. The brakes are fantastic. That's really late on the brakes into the hairpin for the Quattro, and it will get stopped really without too much of a fuss as well. Now the downside, I don't think this car is quite as quick as some of the others when it comes to acceleration and straight line speed. That's also kind of why the brakes sometimes feel a little better. If it's not going as quick into the corner, then yes, of course you can brake a bit later, but it does get stopped very, very well. Yeah, around the turns and so on, it's certainly not too harder a car to drive. We're coming up to a really tight and twisty section through here. This is a horribly tight and twisty area. Now, as regular viewers will know, I really don't like sliding cars around. However, when it comes to the hairpins here, it's the quickest way I could get these four-wheel drive cars around. If I don't start sliding the cars around, you just get a lot of understeer. So I found it quicker just to chuck the likes of the Quattro around. It was better getting through the really tight corner. Of course, to a turn like this, I'm not going to be sliding it. My general rule was if it was a sort of a square left or right, I probably wasn't going to be sliding it around. If it was any more than that, a hairpin or one of the acute corners, then that was just how I could get it around the course quicker. And it looked fairly spectacular and so on. So yeah, there's that really, really nasty, intricate section in the middle of this stage. Then we have another sort of fast, long straight that sort of keeps going on and on uphill. Then we come to a really horrible corner. This next one, it's completely blind. You can't see where it goes. It looks, so on the approach, it kind of looks like it's relatively fast. It isn't. It's a really nasty, tight hairpin that I just got a tiny little bit wide with the Quattro. Slightly bumped the bank on the outside, but that's no problem. And then it's on the brakes, downhill, into the final hairpin, chuck the car around, being careful of the inside. Yeah, that caused a few problems. And it is up towards and across the line for the Audi. Up next, we go to the Peugeot 205 T16, the most successful of the Group B rally cars, and I do like the 205. I will be honest, when I set off to do this, I had relatively high expectations that the Peugeot would go fastest down here. Reason being, the Quattro has 400 horsepower, weighs 2,100 pounds. That's pretty damn impressive power to weight ratio, certainly in four-wheel drive. So yeah, it's all very well and good. The Peugeot is terrifying down here. Well, through this really fast section, the Peugeot it doesn't quite have the same planted, the same grip as you get with the Quattro. But yeah, back to power. So Peugeot, most powerful car here. 480 horsepower. It's 80 horsepower more than the Quattro, and it's 2,006 pounds. So 110 pounds later, 80 more horsepower. Yeah, you're kind of expecting this to go pretty damn quick. And again, the Peugeot is a relatively easy car to drive. The brakes are damn impressive on this as well. It does get stopped. It gets stopped as well as the Quattro. You are going a little bit faster with this car when you come to a braking zone, certainly, so you do have to be aware of that. You are braking a little earlier with this car than the Quattro, but still the brakes are Brakes are impressive, and on a course like this, the brakes are so important, so very important, with all of these very tight, very sharp corners to be dealing with. Now, the fear I had with the 205 is that it would be twitchy. Having really high-powered, short wheel-based cars, they can be a little bit scary at times. Certainly, the 205 is not as stable. I did get it just tiny little bit wide out of that turn. They tend not to be quite as stable as the likes, let's say, of the Quattro. It is certainly noticeable with the 205. You will see it on a few occasions. It does just, when it just starts sliding, it kind of wants to snap around on you if you're not careful. There, for example, could have got that quite badly wrong. It's sort of just about it's just on the acceptable limit for me as a driver. Here, it's just controllable enough for me to feel comfortable, basically, with racing it. For the sake of this test, all the cars will run with the standard setup on them. None of them were god awful. So yeah, you have to be a little bit aware of the 205. You have to be a tad bit careful at times, and yeah, you have to be aware of the speed that you got with this car. It really was very, very fast. Yeah, at times you could feel it starting to want to be a bit twitchy, but all in all, it's survived. It's survived very, very well. Up next, the Lancia Delta S4, often regarded as one of the fastest rally cars never to win a championship, sadly to the cancellation of Group B. Now, this is the lightest car here. 1,962 pounds is all this car weighs. However, it doesn't have as much power as the Peugeot, only 400 horsepower in it. I mean, it's still a very, very quick car, and honestly, acceleration-wise, it's not that far off the likes of the 205. There is a big problem though with the Lancia. It's less twitchy than the Peugeot, but the issue is the brakes. The brakes are not good on here at all. We're going roughly the same speed as the Peugeot. See how much earlier we are having to brake into this hairpin. It really doesn't get stopped. I'm not quite sure what it is about the Lancia, why it just doesn't stop whatsoever. I have a very big moment out of that corner. One of the real dangers of this track, we'll see a little bit later when we come to when things didn't quite go so well. One of the real dangers here is, sure, on tarmac, sliding around and everything, you can get some corner speed, but if you dip a wheel on the grass, and these are not the widest of roads, you dip a wheel on the grass, you are going to have some major problems. I got away with it that time, though. It wasn't very often that would be the case if you put a wheel on the grass. Yeah, firing the Lancia through here, it was very, very nice. It was kind of a nice balance between, being responsive, like the Quattro, having the grip through these turns and so on, and not being as twitchy as the Peugeot. I really liked the way this car handled the corners, handled the tight twisty section through there. But dear God, the brakes were terrible. We'll see coming down here. I was kind of using the lights coming through the trees there because it was all set at the same time of day and so on. There's a little junction to the left. Most cars were braking at that junction, or in the case of the Quattro, quite a lot after that. This you had to brake before. I don't know why the Delta was so bad. It's the lightest car here. I would expect this to be one of the good cars under braking. It just wasn't. Again, coming up here, most cars were braking by that. You just see it flash past that little yellow flag marker. And the Delta, no, you brake there, you are going up the banking and into the crowd. It does not get stopped. And again, down in this hairpin, on this is my fastest run with the car. I did actually brake a tiny little bit early because I just don't trust the car. You get a tiny little bit of a wheel on the grass again on the exit. But the Delta made it across the line safely. Up next, the Ford RS200, the latecomer, if you like, to the Group B party. And honestly, it wasn't a particularly successful car. It never did amazingly well, simply because they never had time to fully develop it. It is the heaviest car here by quite a way. 2,500 pounds. Yeah, sure, for race car standards and so on, that's light, but when everything is 500 pounds, 400 pounds lighter than you, yeah, it's quite a heavy vehicle. It is decent enough on power, 451 horsepower, but yeah, I wasn't expecting this to set the fastest time. It's just a bit too heavy. It is, however, a very nice car to drive. I was really impressed with how well the RS200 drove. Through that fast section there and the bumps and so on, a lot of the cars were quite scary. The Ford, I had no concerns with. The brakes weren't as good as the Quattros. It wasn't quite as good at getting, it wasn't as terrible as the Lancia, certainly, but the brakes weren't as good as the likes of the Quattro and the Peugeot, but certainly sort of throwing it around these corners. the Ford was a very good car. And again, in real life, while it wasn't particularly successful, the people that drove it said that it was a good car. It is often regarded as one of the best balanced, one of the nicest of the Group B cars to drive. Had they had a couple more years, this thing could have been an absolute monster. But yeah, as it is, it was just a little bit too heavy and perhaps underpowered, or certainly sort of power to weight ratio underpowered and so on. As we come up to the tight, twisty section around here, yeah, the Ford was a lovely car to get around here. Very, very easy car to drive around this course. Again, I mean, of course, yeah, you still got to be very, very careful. One of the features of the German rally is the rocks that you see lining the side of the course. They are always a scary thing. And that's one of my most sort of vivid memories of the German rally from the old Colin McRae games and so on that I would play. Was the rocks, like the concrete bollards we see here. These things are such horrible bloody things. I think I actually might have slightly smacked one on the way out of that course. It was only a little bit of a bump. It's fine. I mean, again, as we come on to this next fast section, the RS200 is not as quick as the other cars. Which is, yeah, it's a bit of a shame. I'd love to see how like a lightened, if they had the chance to develop these fully, I think they would have been really quick. As it was a good car to drive. I tried to carry too much speed just running up on the banking there. If I'd done that in some of the other cars, I probably would have gone round in a circle. The RS200 dealt with it remarkably well, sort of running wide there. We chuck it into the final corner with a big slide, and then we just accelerate up towards the line. The windscreen wipers are going for who knows why, and across the line with the Ford. The final of our four-wheel drive cars. It is on to the Metro 6R4. Quite possibly the craziest car of the Group B era, I have to say. The Metro, well, it bears very little resemblance to the Rover Metro. It has huge wings and splitter thing on the front. The engine's in the middle. It is four-wheel drive. It's just a crazy car. I don't know who on earth thought this idea up. I like them. Whoever thought up the Metro 6R4, I do like them. However, it is not the nicest car to drive. What I said about the Peugeot, my fear with the short wheelbase car being twitchy, the Metro is that. This section through here is horrible in the Metro. It's kind of almost ish flat out, but there's quite a lot of oversteer. The car is wanting to get twitchy. The brakes are pretty good. It gets stopped relatively well. But I'm constantly scared of this car sort of being twitchy and trying to kill me at some point. This is the least powerful of all of our cars, 380 horsepower, 2,293 pounds, so it's not got the most amazing power to weight ratio on it. It's still pretty damn quick, of course, don't get me wrong. It's the handling that I was constantly scared, basically, of this car when it came to sort of the slow speed corners. Not so much. You could slide it around these, and I didn't have too many problems with this. It's as soon as it starts getting a little bit faster, that's when I started having real issues with the oversteer. Through this section, the Metro, yeah, being a very short wheelbase car, was lovely and agile and so on. But as soon as it starts getting faster, I just don't trust the back end not to get it into trouble. Again, we get some very big slides from the Metro. Had the odd wheel on the grass here and there with this car. Some places you could get away with it on some of the sort of the slower acceleration zones. If you get off the grass quick enough, then you were okay. You can see the brake difference on this to the Lancia. How much better this gets stopped into these turns than the Delta could. It's really, quite incredible just how much the Delta struggled. Coming up here, these bits here, fortunately not quite tight enough to cause any issues for the Metro. It's it's okay enough through that kind of fast section. Again, on the brakes, just after the yellow flag for this one. As we come round, and again, a wheel on the bank, we could get away with it, turning down towards the final corner. It was a challenge, certainly. The Metro definitely the hardest of the four-wheel drive cars to drive. Yeah, it took a bit of getting used to this car. Once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. Certainly around a track like this, it's okay. There's not too many sort of fast-flowing sections. But a little bit of an awkward one, that one. Then it was on to the rear-wheel drive cars. We have two of them. Up first was the good old Lancia 037. Now, you won't see as much sideways stuff with this car. Being rear-wheel drive, if I try and drive it in the same manner as the four-wheel drives, it'll just spin out. So you had to be a little bit more careful, but of course, being rear-wheel drive, there wasn't the same understeer going on, so it kind of evened itself out, really. Now, the Lancia is quite considerably down on power compared to the four-wheel drive cars that it is that we're putting it up against. 325 horsepower in this one, so it's it's 75 horsepower less than the likes of the Quattro. I wasn't expecting this to beat the Peugeot. In all honesty, I wasn't really expecting this to be able to beat the Quattro. I wasn't thinking that the Lancia was actually going to be able to do it, because it weighs pretty much the same as them, 2,123 pounds. So the power-to-weight ratio is nowhere near as good as the four-wheel drive cars. I mean, it's not a bad vehicle to drive, this one, certainly. And being on tarmac, we don't have too many oversteer problems, unless I'm being a moron with the handbrake. It doesn't really want to be sliding when we do come up to this nice twisty section now. You've just got to kind of be a bit careful with it. You don't want to. It's very easy, having driven the four-wheel drive cars, to try and overdo the going sideways. And if in this, you're just going to lose time because you don't have the front wheels kind of to help drag you round. So it was better to be sort of sensible. Much more my sort of thing. I did get getting that wheel on the grass. In anything really around here is going to cause you such big problems, because there's such big issues there. And luckily I was going slow enough so that I could recover that one in such a way that I could gather everything back in. The other thing with the 037 is, much like the Delta, it didn't have very good brakes. It wasn't as bad as the S4, but I think that's partly because it wasn't going as quick as the S4 coming to a corner. Something about these Lancias, they just did not want to get stopped. They really were not a big fan of these braking zones. Again, having to brake quite early down here. Yeah, this is much more sort of my driving style, if you like, getting these cars around. It was just the quickest way that I could do it. Again, coming under braking into to this final corner was a little bit of a faff with this one, trying to judge it right. But we got around things. Certainly a less spectacular run, but it is a clean run from the Lancia as it crosses the line. And our final car was the Opel Manta. I'll be honest, I didn't expect very much from this car at all. It's 275 horsepower, 2,161 pounds. I think apart from perhaps the Manta was in an earlier dirt game. I'm pretty sure the Opel was. I can't remember. It might have been Dirt 2 or something. I didn't actually know that this was a Group B car, but it goes in the Group B rear-wheel drive category along with the Lancia. So I thought, we'll give it a go. And I certainly wasn't expecting as much speed. Again, power-to-weight ratio on this is less than the Lancia, far less than the four-wheel drive cars. But yeah, I'd give it a try. And I was really impressed with how this car drove. It may not have been as quick as the Lancia straight line speed acceleration wise, but this was a really nice car to drive. While things did go a little bit wrong there was kind of I pushed it on the brakes just a little bit too much. If I'd been any fraction later there, I was going to have a really big crash. I just got it stopped and kind of panic handbrake. In the rear wheel drive cars, I literally only use the handbrake if I'm about to miss the corner, and that is the only way I may get it stopped and turned. Amazingly there, that was actually a relative, this is the quickest run, of course, that I did. It was a very quick first sector as well, or was it second sector? But either way, I was actually surprisingly quick through there with that one. I just got everything right at getting it stopped. This was a really nice car through the turns. It was, didn't really have much of a chance on the straight sections, but when we came into these tight technical sections, the Manta was really good to drive. Far better than I expected it. I expected it to quite struggle against the likes of the 037, and certainly with the four-wheel drive cars. I was thinking that this wasn't going to stand a hope in hell, but through the corners, it was really quite good. And again, the brakes on this were pretty decent as well as we come down towards this next corner, braking far later than I could with the 037, making sure to get it stopped through here and avoiding all of the horrible rocks. Yeah, there's such a nasty turns through there. In general, it's quite a narrow thing. Well, to be fair, all of the dirt rally stages that I've been on, they're all very narrow. I also love the amount of dust that gets kicked up. We're on tarmac. If you look in the rearview mirror, the amount of dust that gets kicked up. Seems like nobody else drives on this this piece of road, yeah, there's many dusts are kicked up around here. It's around up towards the final corner now. Again, you can see just how much later you can get on the brakes with the Manta. Get it stopped, get it turned, quick dab on the handbrake to try and get it round. Yeah, it's a little bit of a fiddle getting around that final hairpin, but the Opel is across the line. Now, before we go and look at the results, well, things didn't quite always go to plan with these cars, as you can imagine. A lot of the time, it was the same thing that went wrong. Stick a wheel on the grass, things get very sideways, and in this case, the Quattro went to find one of the rocks. That is a hidden rock as well. I had no idea it was there until I hit it, because it's kind of behind grass and behind sort of bumps and so on. And yeah, the Quattro went face first into that one. This is at the final turn. Maybe tried to cut the corner a little bit too much, and well, it's a proper FailRace video. The car, we've pretty much rolled the Audi at the final turn. I tried to get away with cutting the corner too much on the inside, and yeah, that'll put the Audi over. Peugeot didn't cut the corner this time. Wheel on the grass, and we're going up towards a sign. That's not really what you want to be doing with your 205. Amazingly, the time that set was still surprisingly quick. You kind of gives you the idea just how fast the 205 was. The Delta S4, this was my first run with the car. Yeah, we're not going to get stopped. Just not at all. That's if you brake at the same place I was with the Peugeot. That's what happens with the Delta. It just doesn't make the turn and panic and handbrake. We didn't hit anything aside from the sign, but yeah, there you go. RS200 running in a little bit too hot, and we're going to go and play with the crowd over that way. It's a deceptively tight corner, that one, and that's often what would end up happening. The Metro being twitchy, I got a big twitch. This is right at the start of the run. I hated this turn with the Metro so much, because if you tried to carry any speed, it did this. The back end just let go, and we've had a rather high speed off, and now, yeah, we've spun it around in a circle. Just a little bit of exploring with the Metro. Certainly the Metro was the hardest one of the four-wheel drive cars to drive. This turn here is horrible, getting the braking right. You can't touch the grass. If you touch the grass, something like that happens. Doesn't matter what car you're driving. If you touch the grass, that is likely to be the result. The Metro certainly wins the award for most spectacular crash, though. As going through this fast section, I got it slightly on the grass, was frantically trying to pull it off, but if you try and do that too soon, you'll just get it sideways. I may have found a bit of a dip, and, well, we properly rolled the car there. And yeah, we managed to get 1.5 rolls from the Metro. The Mantra did have a very big crash as well. I got it a little bit sideways coming over the jump. The landing was all wrong, ended up in a tree, and we may have lost a front tyre and sort of bodywork. That was a pretty big impact for the Manta there. Yeah, aside from that crash with the Opel, it was actually a really good car. Anyway, on to the times. At the top of the table, unsurprisingly, is the 205 T16, a 2:31.6. The Delta S4 goes into second, only 4 seconds off the 205, and if that had the same brakes as the Peugeot, I have no doubt they would be very, very close. The brakes on that Delta let it down so much. Third, the RS200, quite impressed with that. Lovely, easy car to drive, a 2:39.2. The Quattro goes into fourth, a 2:40.8, and the 205 that hit the sign on one of the failed runs, that actually went quicker time than the Quattro did. That's how fast that 205 is. And then we find the Lancia and the Manta. Amazingly, the Lancia a 2:42.2, the Manta a 2:43.0. Very close between them two. They're not that far off the Quattro, and they're both quicker than the Metro 6R4 that did a 2:43.5. So as far as the Lancia beating the Quattro on the tarmac, not quite, but it was pretty close. And the Manta, despite being so down on power, to the four-wheel drive cars, really didn't do that badly. I'm impressed with how well those two rear-wheel drive cars did. They are so down on power, but they still did decent times. They both beat a four-wheel drive Group B car. I think that's pretty damn impressive. And the Manta really surprised me with just how nice that car is. I really do quite like it. But there we go. There we have your results. The Lancia didn't quite beat the mighty Quattro, but it did come quite close. Closer than I perhaps expected them to as well. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, goodbye.